Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Mozart's most embarrassing work. And it's actually a very easy pick. Well, some of you have suggested the Magic Flute because of its absolutely atrocious, racist, misogynistic, appalling farrago of nonsense of a plot. But no, it isn't the Magic Flute, because all the evidence is that Mozart took it enormously seriously and wrote absolutely glorious music for it. And Mozart's music is really very seldom embarrassing. It can only be embarrassing contextually, when the music that he wrote is completely wrong for the circumstance. And you can't argue that about the Magic Flute. I mean, it fits the circumstances like a hand in a glove. No, Mozart's most embarrassing work is La Clemenza di Tito. I remember vividly, yes, when I was just a callow youth discovering the Da Ponte operas, the Magic Flute and not the Magic Flute, Figaro and Così and Don Giovanni, those three. And then you do the Magic Flute and you do the Abduction from the Seraglio, the two big German ones. And then there's this whole slew of early stuff that everybody ignores and that are neither better nor worse than what they purport to be as operas of the period by someone who was like 7. And Mozart gets a pass for stuff he wrote before he was pubescent. And then you realize there's another one. This thing he wrote in the last year of his life, he had like 15 minutes to write it. That doesn't mean it's going to be bad. I mean, Handel wrote Messiah in like 10 minutes, so it's okay. But no, there's this opera seria. It was written for the coronation of Leopold II as the Emperor of Bohemia. So it was one of those operas that was designed to, first of all, ratify the worldview of the aristocracy. And most of these pieces, La Clemenza di Tito, Titus's clemency. It's about begging the ruling monarch not to be an aristocratic bastard. I mean, for example, if Donald Trump gets reelected president of the United States, we're going to have a La Clemenza di Donald opera commissioned and written. Not that Donald would see it. And I know, I'm supposed to keep politics out of this, but it's an analogous situation. You don't want some sort of wannabe tyrant to be vengeful and miserable and nasty and awful. And so you write an opera asking him to be merciful. Not that it ever did any good. But they did. Anyway, that's what La Clemenza di Tito is. The original libretto was by Metastasio, but Mozart took a look at it and his friends and said, oh no, we can't go. It's like a 3-act endless thing. And 40 composers said it already before Mozart got his hands on at least 40. There are a whole bunch of them. Gluck did one, and there's a bunch of them. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm going to give you the plot, and then I'm going to tell you why it's Mozart's most embarrassing work. And I'm sure at the end of the day, you will agree with me. It's also one of his dullest, by the way, except for a couple moments, which we'll get to anon. So here we are. You ready? Here is the story, courtesy of Wikipedia. Thank you very much. With maybe a few editorial emendations by myself. We'll see as we go. Vitellia, daughter of the late Emperor Vitellius, who had been deposed by Tito's father Vespasian, wants revenge against Tito. She stirs up Tito's vacillating friend Sesto, who is in love with her, to act against him. They sing a duet. If you love me, you'll kill him. One of those things. But when she hears word that Tito has sent Berenice of Galicia, Cilicia, of whom she was jealous, back to Jerusalem, Vitello tells Sesto to delay carrying out her wishes, hoping Tito will choose her, Vitellia, as his empress. You see, that's perfectly logical. And Sesto, by the way, is the biggest wimp in all of opera. He just meekly does whatever she tells him to. Tito, however, decides to choose Sesto's sister, Servilia, to be his empress, and orders Annio, Sesto's friend, to bear the message to Servilia. Since Anno and Servilia, unbeknownst to Tito, are in love, this news is very unwelcome to both. Servilia decides to tell Tito the truth, but also says that if Tito still insists on marrying her, she will obey. Tito thanks the gods for Servilia's truthfulness and immediately forswears the idea of coming between her and Annio. You see, Tito's just such a nice guy. I mean, as Tovey says in his discussion of this ridiculous opera, the day that he can't make somebody happy is a day lost or something like that, Anyway, so there you go. In the meantime, however, Vitellia has heard the news about Tito's interest in Servilia and is again boiling with jealousy because she hasn't heard that Tito is willing to let Servilia marry Anio, or whatever his name is. She urges Sesto, once again, to assassinate Tito. He agrees, of course, singing one of the opera's most famous arias, Parto Parto Ma tu ben mio, with bassett clarinet obbligato. Yeah, absolutely. Almost as soon as he leaves, Anio and the guard Publio arrive to escort Vitellia to Tito, who has now chosen her as his empress. She is torn with feelings of guilt and worry over what she has said Sesto to do, because now, after the second time she told him to kill him and he's agreed, now she has to call him back again. And he still loves her, and he has to stop because she is going to get married and become empress. Yeah. I can't even, I stumble over the words even trying to describe this ridiculous situation. Sesto, meanwhile, is at the capital wrestling with his conscience. And as he and his accomplices go about burning down the capital, the other characters, except Tito, enter severally and react with horror to the burning capital. Sesto re-enters and announces that he saw Tito slain, but Vitellia stops him from incriminating himself as the assassin. The others lament Tito in a slow, mournful conclusion to Act 1. And that's Act 1. Now, it's only 2 acts now instead of 3, thank God. It's not a very long opera seria, fortunately. Act 2 begins with Anio telling Sesto that Emperor Tito is in fact alive and has just been seen in the smoke and chaos. Sesto mistook another person for Tito. Sesto is just an idiot, too. Sesto wants to leave Rome. He really should. But Anio persuades him not to. Soon Publio arrives to arrest Sesto, bearing the news that it was one of Sesto's co-conspirators who dressed himself in Tito's robes and was stabbed, though not mortally, by Sesto. See, he can't do anything right. The Senate tries Sesto as Tito waits impatiently, sure that his friend will be exonerated for some reason. Publio expresses his doubts and leaves for the Senate. Anio begs Tito to show clemency towards his friend. Publio returns and announces that Sesto has been found guilty, and an anguished Tito must sign Sesto's death sentence. He decides to send for Sesto first, attempting to obtain further details about the plot. Sesto takes all the guilt on himself and says he deserves death. Oh, in the rondo de per questo istante solo. Yeah, that's a famous one too. So Tito tells him that he shall leave it, so he shall have his death, and sends him away. But after an extended internal struggle, Tito tears up at the execution warrant. Oh, he tears it up, pardon me. He tears up and tears it up. Tears and tears. English is such a screwed up language. He determines that if the world wishes to accuse him, Tito, of anything, it should be charging him with showing too much mercy rather than with having a vengeful heart. See, that's the moral that they're trying to get Leopold II, Emperor of Bohemia, to take to his, into his soul, like really. So Vitellia at this time is torn by guilt, but Servilia warns her that tears alone will not save Sesto. Vitellia finally decides to confess all to Tito, giving up her hopes of empire. In the most famous aria of the whole opera, Non più di fiori, with bassett horn obbligato. I mean, it's glorious. In the amphitheater, the condemned, including Sesto, are waiting to be thrown to the wild beasts. I wish they were. That would be the best part about the opera. Tito is about to show mercy when Vitellia offers her confession as the instigator of Sesto's plot. Although shocked, the emperor includes her in the general clemency he offers. There we go. The opera concludes with all the subjects praising the extreme generosity of Tito. He then asks the gods that the gods cut short his days should he ever cease to care for the good of Rome. Okay. So that's the stupid opera. Now, the problem with this opera, and what makes it Mozart's most embarrassing work, is that what is arguably one of his tiny handful of greatest single arias, Non più di fiori, goes to Vitellia. Because Mozart was, of course, the master at characterization, of creating what we call flesh and blood, believable human characters in realistic emotional situations and giving them sublime music to sing. Absolutely amazing, right? We all agree about that. There's no question about that. But then to take this exquisite, glorious, unbelievable aria and stick it in the larynx of Vitellia, possibly the most horrible woman ever to disgrace the stage of an opera, let alone, never mind, an opera seria. I mean, it's an absurdity that even Mozart can't overcome. Nothing is going to make Vitellia a sympathetic, interesting, realistic character. It can't be done. It's not done here, and Mozart doesn't do it, even though musically speaking, Non più di fuori is amazing. So is Parto Parto. So these arias are really beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful, but they are encased in a gelatinous mass of absurdity. And for Mozart to have to even try to do something with it. I mean, he was commissioned. He had to. I grant it. So he did it. And he did it possibly to the best of his ability. But even the best of his ability is not going to stop this mess from being his most embarrassing work. And it could be his most embarrassing work, even if it isn't his fault entirely. It isn't. I mean, although he did accept the story, I mean, there was a whole issue about what the plot was going to be and what story it was going to be and all that nonsense. And he always needed money. So yeah, I mean, it was his fault too. There's no question about that. And what we have is absolutely glorious music in the mercy, in the service to utter nonsense. And that's a shame. And for Mozart, I think that's pretty embarrassing. And we can enjoy the arias. We can enjoy the opera. Heck, I mean, if that's what we want to do. But no. Nobody can argue that this thing is a late Mozartian masterpiece. And that's all the sadder because, this was the last year of his life, 1791. He broke off working on the magic flute to do this. And there was a time, of course, when everybody agreed that it was worthy of nothingness, aside from those arias, which you can always do separately in recital. I've heard them done in recital. They're fabulous. But so there's no reason to actually have to make the case that La Clemenza di Tito is a masterpiece of late Mozartian fabrication. It's not. It's absolutely not. It's an utter dismal failure and absurdity outside of the context of wannabe tyrants and people who need, pathetic and servile, lowly people begging them to take mercy on their miserable lives. So, yeah, that's it. Mozart's most embarrassing work. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.